Well, welcome, Anne Marie. I am so excited to talk numbers with you. Despite being a design business owner, I am really quite type A, and I love talking data and numbers and all that fun stuff. And as a side note for our listeners, we actually got to work together I looked right before we hit record back in August of 2022 to do your branding for Tiny Paws. So we really had the opportunity to really see your thought and passion and creating this beautiful business that you have. So I'm excited to talk through bookkeeping for pet service providers. If you'd love to get started by just sharing a little bit more about yourself and what led you to start your business.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here with you today, Michaela. It's always fun to have these conversations, especially across different disciplines, like you just said, like coming from a marketing side and then talking business numbers. I had a pet sitting business in North Carolina, and one of the big instigators for shifting to bookkeeping was that we moved from the East Coast to Colorado in 2022. And at that time, my kids were in a very different place. They were going into high school and middle school, and I knew that I needed to shift to something that would keep me a little bit closer to home and less outside of the house. It was a big, big change in everybody's world, and they just needed mom a little bit more. And so I tried to figure out what direction that would lead me in. And I'd always said if I had not gone into animal care so early on in my life, that being an accountant would have made sense to me because numbers just are fun to me. I enjoy it. I enjoy the puzzle piecing together of different aspects of a business and the financials in that. So I decided to take a course to get certified as a bookkeeper. It was supposed to be a 3+ month course at your own pace, and I finished it in 2.5 weeks. And that was really my first indicator that this was probably a good place for me to be. But beyond that, having been in the pet care industry, I realized early on that wasn't a service that was meeting this need in our industry. There was no one talking specifically to pet care as a bookkeeper, as a finance person. And I had some really, I don't know, strange is not the right word, but an idea of what a bookkeeper should look like to me was someone who was dressed up in a suit, who was far more corporate in the world. And that just never matched the philosophy or personality of most of the pet sitting people or pet care individuals that I knew. And being an entrepreneur, it was important to me to create the next job in whatever fashion I wanted to. I mean, that's the joy of owning your own business, right? Is you get to be and do and make it however you want. So that was kind of the birth of Tiny Paws Bookkeeping. I wanted a business that could speak to other pet sitters, other pet care providers in a way that was easy for them to understand because I knew how busy life can get and you don't have the time to invest in learning the lingo or the jargon or the know-how for it. If you could have somebody that could just come in and make it easy and understandable in a way that spoke to you, was really going to bridge some connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I resonate with that too from the design perspective as well. There's so many designers out there, but there's the lack of understanding of the actual pet industry. And I think that's where, I mean, especially with numbers, because that is something that I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to dig into numbers and all of that fun stuff. So it's nice you have the experience of having your own business. Now you have the expertise and the skills, and combining that is just such a beautiful thing. I'm sure it helps your clients feel more at ease, more like you understand them. You can help, exactly bridge that gap and everything. That's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'd love to talk as we head into the end of the year here. Like, let's just get started. Like, what should pet business owners be focusing on financially to close out the year strong? Like, what do you even look at?
Yeah. So we're doing now with our clients is gearing up for 1099 season. That's January, the month of January, the 1st through the 31st. If you have worked with contractors in your business, whether they are staff contractors doing your pet sitting, or a business like yours, Michaela, where they've done some branding work, a bookkeeper, anybody that they've brought in from the outside to help them with their business and provide a service, depending on how they're paid, most likely needs to have a 1099 issued in January. So now is a great time to look at your record keeping. Do we have contact information for those contractors? Have we tracked their payments in a way that we can easily see how much we've paid them this year to be able to fill those 1099s out. Have we collected a W-9 from each vendor before we paid them so that we know if they qualified for one or not? This is the time period where we're doing all of the cleanup for that. So anything that has slipped through the cracks, just kind of looking and trying to make sure our record keeping is up to snuff. It's also a great time to start thinking about budget planning. So even though we're not quite yet finished out through the year, just thinking about what our plans are for next year, what our goals might be, and giving your time the space now before the busy holiday season kicks up of what you think you want to do with your business next year. And then finally, auditing your spending. Again, in those quiet times before the craziness of the holidays hit, just taking a look at what your spending has been this year. Part of that budget planning for next year, do we still anticipate to carry the same software subscriptions? Do we continue to stick with maybe a coaching program that we started that may be coming to an end? Like trying to get ahead of some of those decisions now and getting a picture in your head of what next year might look like.
Yeah, that's really smart. I love that. And then I think also too with, and I'm sure this is a topic that you've heard brought up by clients and others, I feel like a lot of those things that you're talking about are more looking at your business. When you think about like the economy in the world going, everything current event wise, without getting into the details of that. But, there's been talk of tighter spending. People are a little bit more hesitant about spending right now. So from your perspective, what are some ways that our listeners can adapt their finances to accommodate for either like slower months or maybe things that they've been used to in terms of bookings, maybe slowing down or people becoming more hesitant? Like, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in the pet care world, we certainly see seasonality in business trends as just a normal process. For pet sitters, that means summertime and holiday times are typically just busier for them. They've got more income coming in. And then when we hit maybe the January through March timeframe, we see those revenue numbers kind of drop and drip. That, regardless of what the economy is doing, those are normal seasonal changes that we can see in here. And it's always a good idea to have a cash buffer in your bank account to help you weather those slow seasons so that we're not spending all of the money that we get in the busier times. And then we're stuck not being able to cover expenses when things slow down and we don't have that income coming in. Also, making sure that every bit of our spending is intentional. A lot of times we can, just through our own human nature, lose sight or lose track of what our spending is if buying treats or toys for the pets that we care for, if we're getting excited about a new coaching program or a new software system. AI is the big buzzword right now these days. So like making sure that our spending in these places is very intentional and that we're tracking our progress with them. As soon as we are not seeing a benefit to our spending, making sure that we're quick to turn off those maybe automated subscriptions or choosing to pack in and go a different direction. So being agile is really important. When we compound all of those conversations with sort of any uncertainty in the economy, as we're seeing today, just being that much more conscious of what we're doing. So if we're not tracking our spending, now is a good time to start to kind of go down that road. And if we are, again, just making sure that we are looking at our numbers, that we're looking at what we're spending and making sure that it has some form of return to us, that we're seeing some benefit out of putting money to.
And I'm assuming that's where a bookkeeper can come in to help with that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not impossible for people to do it themselves. It really isn't rocket science. I know that a lot of business owners are afraid of looking at their numbers for any number of reasons. And if that is something that is holding you back, having a partner like a bookkeeper can certainly help you get over that. It can take some of that emotional piece that we all have to money and to numbers and what our business is doing. It can kind of help put some separation in there and help you get out of your own way in a sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny because, I mean, I told you earlier that I like data and I like numbers, but even still, it took me a really long time to hire a bookkeeper and actually make sense of like what the heck was going on in the business. So, I mean, do you think that somebody should I know you said that it's not, it's not rocket science. They can start to work on this themselves, but do you have any advice for like if somebody's listening right now, it's like, okay, should I be hiring a bookkeeper right now? Or is there a stage where it makes more sense? How does that work, play in?
So this is where everybody is not going to, I mean, it depends. It really depends. I mean, and I don't want to be blind to the fact that bringing a bookkeeper into the picture has financial considerations. Is it good to have a bookkeeper from the start? Absolutely, especially if you're not a numbers person and you don't want to invest the time to become one. We know that entrepreneurs in this industry bootstrap the birth of their business, meaning they don't come into their business with financial investment. They may have a little bit of a nest egg that they can put into it. The beauty of pet care is that for most business owners, it doesn't cost a lot to start a business, but there are some expenses. And if your business is young enough where it's not generating positive net income or even positive cash flow, where we've got extra money left over that we're not putting into use, a bookkeeper is a great place to reinvest that money. But I think for most people of what we see, they bring a bookkeeper in for one of three reasons. They are far too busy to stay on top of their record keeping on themselves, because bookkeeping is not the sexy piece that we have to address in the moment that day. There are far more important things that take our attention away: managing on staff, managing your calendar, collecting payments. Those all take precedence over your bookkeeping. And so if you're continually kicking that can down the road, then maybe it's time to bring in some help and delegate it out. If you really just don't enjoy doing it, life is far too short to spend time doing the things you hate. And again, if you've got the financial space to hire someone in to do it, that's the perfect time to bring a bookkeeper in. And then finally, if you just don't understand it, if you're not tech savvy enough to use a software system, if you just don't have the space and energy to put to understanding how to categorize your money, then again, that's another perfect time. So none of those are at any specific point in a business. It can be when you're, making 50,000. It could be the first day that you start. It could be when you're hiring your first staff member. Usually each of those hurdles are where we find the majority of our clients come to us, or when they come to us at that point. So it's really a matter of, do you have the financial space to afford outsourcing that service, or do you just not care about it anymore? Like, you just don't want to be the person in charge of doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for those who are currently at the stage where they're DIYing it or trying to manage their own money, do you have any common mistakes that you see them making, just so they can become a little bit more aware of what may be falling through the cracks when it comes to DIYing their bookkeeping?
Yeah, time is really the big one. Having a routine where you're staying on top of your bookkeeping, record keeping. I used to say, if you can get on a weekly routine of doing it whenever you find quiet time. For me, in my business, when I had a pet sitting business, it was always Sunday afternoons. That was when most people had already come home from their vacation. So my weekend was winding down. My kids didn't need me as much getting ready for school. And so that was my day to focus on my finances. And when we're doing it weekly, the workload is really small, especially if you've done your bookkeeping last week. You're really only catching up 7 days worth of work. When we put it off and suddenly we're 3, 4, 5 months down the road, now that workload is really big to catch up on. And that can be a mental hurdle that we have to get over. Like, there's so much work. Oh, I don't want to do it right now. Or I don't have, 5 hours to put into this. So if you can give it, 1 hour a week or every other week, and the more habitual you can make that routine, the better, because you'll stick with it and stay on top of it. And then it won't be such a big thing to accomplish down the road. It's easier to chunk it out. And then beyond that, it's commingling personal and business funds, especially for young businesses, people who are just kind of getting started. They may not have separate bank accounts. They may think they can just put everything into their personal accounts and pay out of that. That can make things really messy. We can lose track of maybe some of those expenses that we're a little unsure. Does that count as personal or business? A prime example would be maybe some office supplies. If we buy Post-it notes or printer paper, does that go into personal or business? It can go in business. And if we're not, but if we aren't separating personal and business money, it can be harder to find those little things. And so we can lose out on maybe some business deductible expenses.
Yeah, that's really smart. It's funny because when I was doing my own bookkeeping, I would do it monthly. And I also felt like I would forget, like, I'd see a charge and I'm like, I don't even know what and then I have to waste all this time going back and being like, okay, what was this charge? But if I actually did it weekly, then I'd probably know. Yeah, I feel like that's such good advice. I should have done it weekly because it would have been so quick. I would have known what I had been spending and, been able to categorize and properly do all of that. So that's really good advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So for those who do feel overwhelmed with their numbers, what do you recommend as like the very first step for those who haven't been really like tracking right now their income and expenses and all of that? Like, what's the first thing to do?
To have a separate business checking account that all money comes into and your money goes out. At the very simplest, like separating personal from the business by having a dedicated checking account. And that can go farther into having a dedicated business credit card that you use only for business purposes. Once you can start separating where those payments are coming into and out of, you can get a much clearer picture of what's left over, how much we have available to spend, and then just getting started tracking. So whether you are using a spreadsheet, whether using a handwritten ledger, or something like QuickBooks to track your income and expenses, just having some way that you are putting time, space, and energy and attention to looking at how much is coming in and look at how much is going out and in what areas. So some form of tracking. It does not have to be perfect. I think everybody gets fixated on the idea that they have to know everything 100% before they get started. They have to understand the process. But if you just get started today with just writing down how much money comes in each month and where your spending is going, that is really the basis of bookkeeping. And that is going to bring your attention to looking at these numbers on a regular basis. So again, if we're getting into that weekly or even monthly process of looking at our numbers, it's dedicated time that we're putting in front of ourselves these numbers to pay attention to. I think a lot of people get into more trouble by not looking at their numbers, by looking at them maybe in an imperfect way.
What sort of like reports are most important to look at? Because I feel like most people are like, okay, I know how to look at my profit and loss statement. What always tripped me up was the balance sheet. And I'm like, so I always just I'm like, I'm not looking at that. I'm just looking at like, okay, what's coming in, what's coming out. But like, what do you recommend? What should you look at?
So a profit and loss is definitely going to give you, I think, the actionable insight to your business to know where spending is going. And then you can base decisions there. So if we're not realizing how much we're spending, say, on poop bag supplies or dog treats like that. So, I mean, if we don't see that in a physical number, I mean, those little bitty purchases of $10 here, $6 here, $5 there can really get out of line pretty quickly. So being able to see that type of spending trends on a profit and loss statement. So not looking at even at just 1 month, but look at the last 6 months individually so that you can see how your spending changes over time or with the seasons of your business in there. I think a balance sheet is fantastic to look at because it's going to give you the balances that are in your account, so your bank and credit card balances at that particular time, and how much money you've taken out of the business versus how much you've taken out of the business versus how much the business has made. So are you pulling more money out in your owner distributions and owner draws that the business is making each month? That can indicate a cash flow problem that we're going to set up for ourselves. And then if we have any debt in the business, so if we've taken out a loan or we're carrying credit card debt, that's the balance sheet is where we're going to see those numbers month over month. And again, these reports are great one shot at a time, once a month, but you get far more context if you can look at them several months in a row so that you can see trends and how things are shifting over time.
Okay. I like that's good to know. I know I would always stay with the balance sheet. I'm like, people would pull it up and like kind of show me, and I'm like, yeah, that was one thing I did not.
It is the most abstract report to look at out of the ones that we usually choose to share with our clients for sure. The P&L just makes so much more sense. I mean, because as money comes in and it goes out, that makes sense to people. The balance sheet is a little bit more of a snapshot in time. But what do I do with that information is always a key question that we talk about with our clients. And so usually in this industry, it's about measuring what we have in savings in our bank account versus how much debt we have versus how much money we're taking out as an owner in our equity or what the business is worth to us.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect that you brought that up because that was going to be my next question is how do we actually use that information? Something that I like about you and, what I've seen on your website and how I know that you work with clients is that it's more than just like, here's your profit and loss, like see you later. So I'm curious, how do you use the information? What should they be looking for? How does it guide decision making? Like, how does it relate back to their business rather than just like, okay, everything's tracked and categorized, but like, now what?
Now what? I came into the bookkeeping industry at a really interesting point of time because traditional bookkeeping, if we look at it 10 years ago, was really just about making sure that we were tracking every penny that comes in and out of the business and being as accurate as possible and presenting the business owner with their reports. There was no advisory piece to that or analysis to understand those reports. So if you couldn't interpret the reports, you were kind of SOL. You didn't have, it wasn't the bookkeeper's job to interpret for you, or at least most traditional bookkeeping firms did not go that step. When I came in and was learning the bookkeeping process and engaging with other professionals in there, it's what we're seeing now is a really big shift where business owners want more of that insight. They want to understand how to interpret those numbers and what the context means for their business. And so from the very beginning, as our bookkeeping firm has grown, that's been a really integral piece that we meet with our clients each month, that we're walking through those reports with them. What we're looking for and what we're trying to explain is really the context of the company. So what is also happening in there? Are they hiring new employees? Are they expanding to a new service area? Are they choosing to add a completely new service line into the business? All of those things have financial impacts. And so just looking at the numbers, we have to understand what's going on in the business beyond just what we can see on paper, because that's going to inform whether or not the amount that they have in net income or the money that's left over, is it enough? Those are questions that we're trying to help the business owner answer. Do I have enough to do these things that I want to do with my business? Am I overspending in an area that I need to curb? Well, the answer to that could be, it depends. Are you seeing enough return on that expense? Are you gaining from what you're putting your money into? If you're not, then maybe we need to talk about changes in there. Do we want to take a loan out to cover some expenses? Again, it could depend on what other things, what other goals they may have for their business. So really trying to interpret the numbers within the context or the holistic view of what is going on in all the different parts of their business. And I don't know if that really answered the question you were asking, because it's a lot of, it kind of depends, but.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just helpful. I feel like a lot of times people just think that bookkeepers are just tracking receipts and categorizing information. How does it look? If you wouldn't mind maybe explaining a little bit about like, how does it look if we were having a meeting right now and, you already did all the monthly tasks for bookkeeping, then like, what does it look like? How do we walk through that?
Yeah. So, first thing that I'm always going to ask a client is, from the last time that we met, has anything changed? Like, what's new in your business? Or even what's forefront in your mind? Like, what are you thinking about today that maybe we can talk numbers around? Like, what is happening in that business? Because again, what we're going to look at for our numbers happened last month, right? So we're already a month behind because we don't do any work until the month closes out, and we can look at those numbers and now see, what did the business do last month? So we're already in the past. So anything that is new and that is happening in your business, all right, that can change what we did last month and maybe provide a direction that we want to take going forward. So starting to kind of pull the conversation into the future. What do we want to do? Because our bookkeeping just tells us what we've already done. It's given us our starting point at any particular point, whether we started 6 months ago fresh or we're starting fresh today. We just have a starting point. And now, based on what your goals are, where do we want to go? So we're going to look at your profit and loss statement first. We're going to see how much income came in last month. We look at 1 month at a time to kind of chunk it down. That's what's most fresh in business owners' minds. Look at where we spend. Does it match what we anticipated? We try and carry conversations from the last time that we met too. So does it match what your goals were then? If it doesn't, why? What is out of place on here? Where did we spend more money than we expected to? Or where did we spend less than we thought we were going to? And is that good or bad? Is there enough money left over for the goals that you're stating that you want to do? Do we have enough cash flow to fund future plans? So if we're sitting at, let's say, August, getting ready to head maybe into some slower months, September and October, as kids go back to school and families curb some of their vacation, or for dog walkers, maybe they're picking back up new clients. They're looking at, things ramping up. Do we have enough money in the bank today to cover expected expenses that may be coming down the line for us? Or do we need to set something aside for a big expense that's coming down? Insurance premiums is a big one that sometimes catches people by surprise, because that can be a once a year. And if they're not planning for that to come up and haven't set money aside early enough, it could be a shock to their system to figure out how to pay that. Or we're coming off of a slow month right into a heavy month. July 4th is one that I see where we're coming into a heavy holiday weekend at the first or the end of a month. And maybe we collected money early for those pet sits, but now we have the expense of paying our pet sitters, our employees, for the holiday rush that we've just had. So trying to plan ahead for those big expenses in there, and looking at, that's what I look at on that profit and loss. Like, do we have enough left over to save and set aside for maybe those big things that are coming up down the year? And then at the balance sheet, we're looking at that to see what's in the bank. If the business made money, but we took all of it out as a distribution, there's none left over to put into savings. So that's where we start to see because the distributions or money that we're putting into the business ourselves is in the equity section on the balance sheet. And so we're looking there to see, is that growing? Or, are we taking out the same amount that the business is making? If so, there's not enough left over to put aside. And so maybe we need to shift what we're paying ourselves or find a way to make more money at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Okay. And then just a side note question is, do you know and like the profit first method?
Absolutely. So we just last month became profit first professionals.
Ooh, perfect timing.
I know. It's fantastic. I have lived and breathed profit first for several years now in both my past businesses and current businesses. So I love the concept of preparing or planning for your profit first and knowing what you want to have out of the business. And then everything else has to fit in that leftover bucket, right? It really puts us into a budgeting mindset that way, and we're not, let me back up. With the profit first method, most business owners think that money coming in, our revenues, minus our expenses, equals our profit. So we're left with the leftovers. But if we're not adequately planning our spending or being intentional with it, we could be in a situation where there's not enough left over. There's not enough profit to plan for savings, for taxes, to pay yourself as the business owner. And the profit first method just sort of inverts that math problem. I don't know what the word goes there, but it now becomes revenue or income minus profit equals our expenses. And so we're left, the leftover now is what we have to spend with. And we have to make sure that our spending fits into that little, or not a little piece, but that piece of the puzzle. Like, it has to encompass that part. So we automatically start budgeting for what we had left over.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, it's based off the book. I think I pronounce it Mike Michalowicz.
Yep.
His book called Profit First Method, or if it's just Profit First, I'm not sure, but we'll link it in the show notes. But it's such a good book. And it really did change my whole thought process on how to categorize. Because I mean, that's something, obviously, I'm not a pet care provider, but there's still those seasons of if people are paying for projects on payment plans, then I need to make sure that I'm covering expenses for my team. And so having percentage buckets go into different accounts so I know what's going into, operation expenses and what's going into profit, what's going into payroll and all that, like different accounts so that I know that I have enough, even if it's a slower month, but someone paid the month previous or, all of that stuff. So I highly recommend it too. And I love when bookkeeping professionals or accountants are familiar and like it as well. And that's so cool that you guys are certified. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm
How
really
fun.
excited for it because there are a number of people in our client list who are already using the Profit First method, and we have, our own personal experiential knowledge from it. And now we're going to be able to bring more structure to our coaching with it and really help people figure it out because if you're overspending within the Profit First method, if you're overspending, whether it's in payroll or in there, you set your goals for what percentage or what amount you think it should be. And if we go over that, it's going to have that automatic visceral reaction because we're going to overdraw a bank account, and nobody feels good when that happens. And it's that emotional response that Mike Michalowicz kind of wants you to have happen because that's going to be your self-preservation instinct of making sure that you're sticking to your budget because you don't have any more money than what you've allocated there. And if we need more than that, we need to either reevaluate or, fix what's broken in that system to fix our spending or fix our allocation.
Yeah, I love how you're able to like categorize how much, the percentages to go in. The one thing I was really bad with Profit First that I feel like I like barely ever did was how he talked about like quarterly. He would say take half out of the profit account. Is that something that you recommend? I feel like I would never do that. And I get it. I love that, like, yeah, we should enjoy being business owners. We should, be able to like take those draws when we're able to or whatever. But I don't know. I might have like done like one thing, but never.
And I think it depends on the person. Like there are some people, like it sounds like you and I would be, where that's hard to take it and his recommendation was to do something frivolous with it. Throw a party, go out to dinner, like enjoy the profits of your business. And I can absolutely relate to that. We're not here to slave every single day. If we're not getting enjoyment out of our business, even from a financial sense, like why are we here? What are we doing in this? And that was always his point to make. But there's some of us who will want to see, like I get a charge out of seeing those numbers climb each month, and I don't want to reduce it. Like I'm happy, like knowing that there is a safety in the savings for it there. But there is a point to, again, enjoying the fruit of our labors and recognizing that it is there. That it brings me to another point that we all have our own individual relationships with money, and that can really inform what we do with it and how we treat it. So for someone like me, again, who really gets a kick out of seeing the savings increase, like that's a feeling of safety for me personally. And someone else may have a very different relationship with that. So when it comes to what do we do with that profit, it really kind of comes down, what do you want the business to do for you? Do you want to have the safety and security of having a bigger nest egg than maybe you necessarily need? Or do you want to be able to profit share some of that profit with your team members? Like, I mean, we can use that profit for anything that we deem is important to our business and to ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. And I definitely resonate with more of that. I want that safety net there. So you mentioned your coaching services. I'd love to talk through that as well, because you offer bookkeeping, you have your advisory services. I'd love to learn more about how that actually works and what you offer.
Yeah. So we're getting ready to launch a new pay structure with our business. It's coming November 1st. So again, kind of great timing for us to be talking a little bit about this. What we used to do and how we used to price our services was very clinical. It was based on the number of accounts you had, the number of transactions your business processed each month. And it really didn't give a sense of value to our clients. And so what we've been working on for the past year almost is how can we take traditional bookkeeping, the basics of getting the work done, of categorizing the transactions and spitting out financial reports, but also give the value back to our clients who may be in a similar position where they don't understand a balance sheet and they don't know why they need it and what's the point. So our advisory really comes in that we meet with each of our clients on a monthly or quarterly basis as they determine they want and need, to walk through those reports together, to give them the context of what they're looking for. How do they answer the questions and challenges that are coming up in their business? Advisory services traditionally has been with the CFO, a financial officer, or we might have heard the term a fractional CFO, where it's maybe one CFO is working part-time for each business. That's where you get a lot of the analysis and you get into more of the operational aspects of your business and marry it with the financial. And those have been two very separate services by sometimes two different people within the finance industry. And we want to be both of those together with our client. So we are putting together packages, both bookkeeping service and maybe analysis. Maybe we start helping you with creating a budget. And that looked like having an annual budget meeting at the beginning of the year, tracking it for your business and comparing what you're spending or what you're bringing in versus what we thought would happen. And keeping that conversation going throughout the year so that we're doing some comparative analysis. Do we need to shift our assumptions and the variables that we guessed on now that we see, 6 months into the year, things have shifted or not, and we're still on track to do exactly what we wanted. Perfect. We're in a good spot. Doing some KPI tracking. So understanding the goals of your business and figuring out the metrics that we need to track to make sure we're staying on target. So if you tell me that you want to increase your sales by 50% by the end of the year, great, perfect goal to have. How are we going to get there? What are the operational pieces that we're going to need to do so that we see those gains? And then how are we going to track and make sure that we're hitting those projections each month? So we're really kind of bringing that advisory piece into our standard packages of bookkeeping so that you're not going separate places or having to meet multiple times a month to meet both of these goals, or you're not inundated with doing all of this tracking yourself.
Yeah, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Because I think in our industry, more so than I see and maybe some others, business owners have bootstrapped this from the beginning. And I use that term because most people kind of fall into this industry. They start out maybe doing it as a hobby because they love animals, not because they get into this because they think they're going to make $1 million right off the bat and they have the business acumen to get them there. A lot of people don't come from a business background or a heavy business background to give them the foundation that they might need. And so they really want someone to walk with them and help them understand these processes, and if they learn it and they understand it so that they don't have to have that repeat monthly meeting, great, fantastic. We can spend that time, engaging in other parts or pieces of the business in that strategy side. But I think for most people, the traditional of just handing them a report does not serve them. I mean, I can do the best bookkeeping in the world, but if you can't take my information and do something with it, it's pointless.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So where can people find out more about your services and your business and connect with you and all of that?
Yeah. So, our website, tinypawsbookkeeping.com, there's a contact form on there. So if you are ready to start a conversation or just explore what we can do for you, and whether or not you're ready, if you fill out our contact form, you'll get a scheduling link to get a 30-minute conversation with me just to kind of start the process of understanding. We're also on Instagram and Facebook at Tiny Paws Bookkeeping as our handle. All great places to engage with us. And then if you are in the DIY space and looking for some additional support, we do have a free Facebook group called Pause to Profit that you can join. And we share tips in there. We're going to be starting some co-working sessions and some Q&As with folks in there
Cool.
too.
Well, that's really cool. We'll link that in the show notes too. That sounds awesome. Before we wrap up, do you have any final advice or any sort of encouragement for our listeners who may be a little bit, embarrassed about their books, not on top of their data and all that? Do you have any advice or final encouragement for them?
Absolutely. I mean, nobody is perfect. Nobody comes to us with perfect books. I have seen it all. And we are very much a judgment-free zone in that respect. It is my belief that regardless of where you come to us from in your bookkeeping journey, it's just our starting point. And we can't decide where your business is going to go or how we're going to improve if we don't know where we're starting from. I have worked with people who have gone through bankruptcy filings, who have had to close their business and maybe start a new one. We have built financial records from someone's calendar planner. That was the only record keeping that she had. And we managed to build an entire 12 months of data from that. So we have the capabilities of taking just about the messiest or what you think is the messiest into something that's clear. Our goal is to be compassionate and to bring you clarity in your bookkeeping.
I love that. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Do you have any sort of mindful tip or a tip that you do in your daily practice that helps you reduce stress or burnout in your business that you'd like to share?
That's a good question. I definitely think that as business owners, we don't take enough time for ourselves. So I am a block scheduler and I live and breathe by my Google Calendar. So if I want to go out and exercise or take a walk, I have to be really intentional and put it on my calendar. So block time to have quiet time in your day. That can be really hard when we're, running from appointment to appointment to appointment and we're not scheduling time for ourselves. That is the best place that you're going to have the mindset and the frame of mind to make changes in your business or to even think through challenges, is just having that piece of quiet time. For me, it's setting aside exercise in the mornings and forcing myself to get up at 6:30 in the morning and go do my exercise. But I feel 1,000 times better about my day and about my clarity of mind to start the actual work of being in my business. So making sure that you're setting whatever time that, whether it's a walk, reading time, quiet time, whether you need to take a nap, like whatever it is, just make sure you're making time for yourself.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having this whole conversation with us about numbers because I know that it's not necessarily everyone's favorite conversation, but I feel like you broke it down in a very attainable way for our listeners, and everybody now knows where to go if they want more support. We'll have all of the links and everything in the show notes, but thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this. I feel like so many people will have stronger financials in 2026 because of you. So thank you so much.
I hope so. And if you're ready to take that leap, please reach out because we'd love to talk to anyone who is maybe just feeling like they don't know exactly what step to take next.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Michaela.